Hi everyone, it's Valerie with Advocates for Angels, and welcome to my Facebook Live series on the IEP season. So tonight I want to talk to you about one of the very most important things that a parent can learn to be successful in advocating for their child in the IEP process. So today, when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk to you tonight about, I was thinking I really want to share with the parents something super important, something really, really just full that I could give you so to help you in IEP season to have a really good IEP. Because I'm sure most parents are coming up on their annual or a transition, or you might have called an IEP meeting for your child at the end of the school year. And I realized that there was a moment in time in my advocacy journey for my daughter Chanel that I had a real paradigm shift in my mindset thinking. And after that happened, that's when I really became a successful advocate, and when everything shifted and changed for me. And so that's what I want to talk to you about this evening. But before I do that, I want to share a little bit about my personal story with my daughter Chanel. So Chanel was diagnosed with autism and seizure disorder when she was about 3 years old. And she went to preschool, and my husband was in denial, and it's the same textbook story as most parents upon diagnoses when they're really little. And I wasn't, too concerned yet because I just, hadn't started learning about autism. I really didn't even know what autism was. And so we were just like, oh, she's going to go to preschool and she's getting everything she needs. And the same, response that most parents have when their child's 3 years old and going to preschool after a diagnosis on how to become an advocate for my child. So I was really angry, and my anger really motivated me to do my research, to start learning, going to conferences, in parent groups and started meeting other parents and really started getting involved. And I took responsibility to hold my school district accountable. And I had a paradigm shift in my mindset. So that was kind of when I realized, hey, they're not going to give it to me, so it's my responsibility to drive my child's IEP. It's my responsibility to learn how to implement my parent rights and learn how to appeal their denials, or to find out what my daughter really needs, to find out what's really available for her, what can I really ask for, and learn how to navigate the system. So I didn't, accept what they told me. I went out and found out on my own. But even so, year after year after year, the school district would argue with me and try to coerce me into placing my daughter in a severely handicapped class. And I would not allow that. I would not allow her to be put in a severely handicapped autism classroom, right? So I wanted her to be in general ed with the supports and services that she needed to be successful to access the general education curriculum, okay? Also, I was up against the UCLA team of developmental neurologists. They told me that Chanel would never talk, that she would never write, that she would never read, and that she was not going to be successful at school, and that eventually I probably would have to get used to the fact that I would most likely have to place her in a institution, meaning she'd have to be in a group home, right? So I never even took that into any consideration. I thought they must be crazy. That's not going to happen to my child. So I didn't believe what the school district said, and I didn't believe what the doctor said either. So I always had high expectations for Chanel. So then I had an even more paradigm shift in my thinking a few years later. So in between there, okay, I was angry and mad at the school district and all the people that worked at the school district, because I thought, how can these people live with themselves? How can they sleep at night? They deny services to special needs children. They don't help the parents to get what they need. They don't tell the parents what they're supposed to do or what they're supposed to ask for. And I blamed the people that worked in the school district. Then when I started getting a little more into the process and more into my education and my knowledge, I realized, wait a minute, this is an institutional bureaucracy, because that's exactly what our school district is. Because school districts are government agencies, and what are government agencies? They're institutional bureaucracies that are motivated by political agendas, and they have a hierarchy of power, right? And what do institutional bureaucracies, what's the bottom line? It's the funding. And so once you realize this is what we're working with, we're dealing with an institutional bureaucracy. It's not your principal or even your administrator at the school district in special education. They are also having to work within the restrictions of an institutional bureaucracy and their rules are keeping power and control over their funding and over their people. And that includes us as parents, right? And then also added to that, we are, as parents, are not a employee of that institutional bureaucracy. So we are outsiders because we're not employees. So they think they're the experts, they're the educators, they're an expert in education, we're experts in parenting. So we should just go home and let them do the educating and we should do the parenting, right? But that's not true, because IDEA endows us as parents to be equal participants in the development of our child's IEP. But we can't be equal participants in the development of our child's IEP if we don't have the knowledge to know how to implement our parent rights, okay? So it's our responsibility as parents to educate ourselves on our parent rights, to know our child's disability, what that means, what they need, and how to ask for the services that they require. So districts administrators will do everything that they can to continue to maintain that power and control over parents. So the first IEP meeting that you go to, your district administrators and IEP team will size you up, meaning they will determine how much knowledge and how familiar you are with the IEP and the IEP process at the first meeting you go to. They'll be able to know the first time they meet you and the first time they have an IEP with you. And then they will treat you accordingly, depending on how much knowledge you do have. And if you don't have knowledge, you're going to get taken advantage of. And that's just the way it is. It's just a fact of life. So many parents, when they come to me to help them and hire me to advocate for their child, I'll ask them upon our intake, I'll say, so tell me about your child's goals. And a lot of parents, in fact, the majority of parents will say, I don't really know. Or tell me about your child's services. What kind of, do they have speech and language, or what kind of related services do they have? They have speech. Well, how much speech do they have? I really don't know. Okay, well, can you, I need your assessments that were done for the speech and language assessment. I need the psychoeducational assessment, because of course assessment is the foundation to build your child's IEP. I don't know what that is. I'm not sure I don't know. And is this it? And they'll start handing me documents and they're not the assessments. So parents, if you don't know what an assessment is, if you don't know what your child's goals are, you don't know what your services are, you're not familiar even with the IEP document, where these things are in your document, you're not going to be leading your IEP team. You're not going to be the coach of your team, and you're not going to be getting the services or the proper educational program that your child needs because you're not familiar with these things. So let me give you an example. So I just had a meeting recently, and this mom that hired me, she was actually a teacher. She was actually an educator. And I met her at the school site, and we walked in, and she came to the school site without her child's folder binder. She came with no documents, with no IEP, and she walked in. Now, I know a lot of moms, when I'm there, they just expect me to do it for them because that's why they hired me. But still, parents, you need to come to your meeting with your IEP document in hand, knowing that you're coming with your last IEP because your last IEP is the IEP that's in effect right now, currently, correct? And then you can look at, while they're working on your new one, you're going to refer to your old one, and you're going to follow along. And you're also going to ask them to provide you with a draft of the new IEP so you can look at that over before you come to your IEP, and you can be prepared on what goals are they going to offer, what accommodations are they going to offer, what are your child's present levels of performance, so you can be an active and equal participant in your IEP meeting. So let me give you another example. So I had, one of my moms, she had this experience where she wanted to get a psychoeducational assessment done for her child. And she was delayed over a year and a half because she didn't know that she had to write that request in writing and provide it to the school district, because once something's in writing, a timeline immediately goes into effect, and they must respond to that request within a certain timeline. There's timelines for everything. So because she was asking for it verbally, they delayed her over a year and a half. So her child, for a year and a half, didn't get the services that she should have been getting because the mom didn't know to put it in writing. So that's just so sad. So she was talking to her special education teacher one day about this, about how frustrated she was about it. And her special ed teacher really cared about this mom and cared about the child. But the staff are given gag orders. They are told, don't tell the parent how to get services. Don't tell the parent what to do. They're not allowed to do that. It's the institutional bureaucracy, our system, coming into play again, right? So it's not the staff members, because of course staff go into that career because they really do care about kids. They really do want to educate kids, but they are not allowed to tell parents certain things, okay? But what that special ed teacher did tell the mom was, she said, Mom, this is what I'd have to say to you. You have rights. So she couldn't tell the mom, put it in writing, put it in writing. She couldn't tell her that, but what she did say was, she gave her a clue. She said, you have rights, Mom. So she was giving the mom a hint, hey, go, read your parent rights, read how to ask for requests, you know. And so then that's when she hired me, and immediately I told her, you didn't put it in writing. So she was very angry that she didn't know that. But these are simple things that parents, we can learn. When you walk into your IEP meeting, at every IEP meeting, the first thing they do, what do? They say to parents, here are your parent rights. Would you like us to review them with you? And what do parents normally say? No, that's okay. And then they take the parent rights and they put it in their purse or put it in their folder, and they go home and they never read it. Now, some parents tell me, I have had a few parents over the years tell me, no, I read it. And I'll say, did you understand it? No, not really. Well, of course, it's a lot of legal jargon, legal language, a lot of stuff you have to look up. You have to read over and over and over again. Go on the web. I teach you. There's tons of resources in how to understand your parent rights and then how to implement them. So, it's out there. We can educate ourselves and learn how to do this. So that paradigm shift that I experienced was a huge crossroads for me. And so that's what I'm trying to get across to you this evening, is that it's not the person, it's not the teacher, it's not the director, it's not anyone in the school district. It's our responsibility as parents to learn how to drive our child's IEP process and development. And it's our job. And so, you got to get over your anger, because I had to do the same thing. I'm a mom too, and believe me, I could tell you lots of stories. I will, as we go on in these videos. Other things that happened to my daughter that were unjust and not fair, and that the system failed my child. But just remember, it's the institutional bureaucracy system that we're dealing with. Most teachers, educators, service providers, administrators really are there because they care about kids. Now, I'm not going to say there are others that are argumentative, that are adversarial, that will outright lie to you. But again, it's our responsibility, because we really have all the power, guys. The law, IDEA, gives us all the power. Our children and us, we have the rights. The law is written for our kids and for us as parents. So all we have to do is learn how to implement that power. And that's the whole key, because that's what they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know that you have all the power. They want you to stay ignorant and not knowledgeable. But, that's the huge key is, learn to work professionally, build relationships with your IEP team members, build relationships, know your case carrier, know who they are, communicate with them, send them emails, know who your district representative is from the school district. I just did a Facebook Live a few nights ago on who is your district representative. Make sure they're at your IEP meeting. When we develop professional, respectful relationships and communicate with our IEP team, things start going so much better. Again, communication. So I just had a mom again, tell me that she hadn't talked to her IEP team or her case carrier for most of the school year, and we're having an annual. So let's think about a coach of an IEP team. So a coach of any team, they meet regularly with their team. They counsel with their team. They encourage their team members. They hold them accountable. That's our job again, holding our team accountable to serving our child with fidelity. So just think about a mom that never talks to her team or her teacher, her case carrier, her service providers, the administrator, nobody for a whole school year, just expecting everything's going hunky-dory, but you're not overseeing anything, communicating with anyone. And then you meet for your annual once a year at the mandated IEP team. That IEP team is not going to be very cohesive, is it? It's not going to be unified. And you're not going to be seen as an equal participant or anyone who's holding them accountable, because you aren't even communicating with your team. So emailing your team, your teachers will respond if you email them and say, I'm checking in, how's my child doing? Do they have any missing assignments? What upcoming tests do they have? Make sure most school sites have the online, queue that you can go on to see missing assignments and all those kinds of things. But communication is key with your IEP team. So the last thing I want to go over with you while we're reviewing this is I always talk about the IEP process, know the IEP process. Well, it's really not that hard. The IEP process is 6 steps. And that IEP process is also the agenda when you go to an IEP meeting. If you're aware and are listening, every IEP meeting has an agenda. They go in order. And that order is actually the IEP process, how IEPs are developed. And it's also your IEP document. So it all goes together. The process, the document, and your agenda at an IEP meeting is all the same 6 steps. And the first step is assessment. Assessment's the foundation and the basis for every single IEP. So everything is always, the first thing they do is they assess. When your child became eligible for a special education IEP, they assessed your child. They did a psychoeducational assessment. So assessment determines the child's weaknesses and areas of deficit, and also the areas of strength through standardized test scores, observations, and questionnaires. So as a result of those assessment findings, that is how they determine the present levels of performance, or the baseline of where your child currently is. So that's step number 2, present levels of performance, or the baselines of where your child is. So do you know your child's baselines of where they are today? Do you know where they are at with grade level according to academically, emotionally, and socially, with their gross motor skills, with their fine motor skills, with all the areas that are in your IEP? That is extremely important, because when you know your child's baselines, then you know how much progress they should be making within the next school year, which is how they write goals. So that's extremely important to know your PLOP. That's the acronym they use, PLOP, PLOP, present levels of performance. The third step in the IEP process are the goals. So the goals are driven by the baselines. So wherever there's a deficit, where the child is below grade level, they write a goal to address that deficit. That's what the law says. The law says if there's a deficit in an area of need, then a goal must be written, okay? So then what drives the goals? What comes out of the goals? The services, okay? So the assessment determines the plop determines the goals determine the services. And then in between there's accommodations. So the goals, really next number 4 is accommodations. Accommodations are everything that a child needs to support them to meet their goals. And those accommodations are, I'm going to name just a few real quick. So it could be the child needs extra time to do homework or turn in work assignments. The child needs preferential seating. The child requires redirection to stay on task. The child requires prompting, or maybe they need to be told directions 2 times or 3 times, or restate the directions. So those are some examples of accommodations. So the accommodations support the goals. The number 5 is the services. So the goals determine the services, because let me give you an example of how services are determined. So if you have say you have speech and language services. If you have only one goal for speech and language services, then most likely you're not going to have a half hour once a week of speech services if your child only has one speech goal, right? Because that's one speech goal could easily be met in a year with very little services. It could even be not even direct services. They could even have just the teacher working on that, okay? Because services can be provided through the teacher in the classroom, or direct services from a service provider. Now, if you had 5 speech and language goals, then absolutely that would have to be done by a speech and language pathologist providing pull-out or push-in direct services by a speech and language pathologist. And it's probably going to be at least once a week for 30 minutes, if not more, because 5 goals in a year for once a week direct services for 30 minutes, that's even going to be difficult to do. So that's how services are provided, depending on the goals, okay? And then depending on the goals and services, that's how they determine a child's placement. So your child's going to be placed in either general education, resource, special education class, or a special day class, or a severely handicapped class. So, and those labels that I'm saying, or those names, they might call it differently in different districts, but that basically it's general ed, and then the first level of the special education class, which is for the really high functioning kids that just are, you know, kind of at risk and behind, and but not really far behind in grade level, don't have a lot of, you know, needs and a lot of behavioral issues. The next level of special education is for the more impacted kids that need a slower curriculum, smaller class size, and a lot more teacher support. That would be the next level of special ed. And then the next level of special ed class is the severely handicapped class, which is more of a functionally based class. And those classes do not require general education curriculum to be taught in those classes, or even access to, well, they're supposed to do access to general education curriculum, but they really don't. They are teaching a functional curriculum. Okay, so just, again, I want to just, focus in on the gravity of this whole situation. I mean, that if you don't, make this mindset shift and get this and take on the accountability of knowing it's our job as parents to do these things that I talked about tonight, it's our child's future at risk here. If I hadn't done what I did, Chanel would never be where she is today, because she's absolutely talking. She graduated with a high school diploma. She did great in school. None of their bleak outcomes of their predictions came true. That of the UCLA neurologist team of developmental pediatricians, they were not correct. And also, the school district wasn't correct because she graduated with a high school diploma and she didn't have to go into this really handicapped class. So have high expectations for your child and don't listen to, their low expectations and their bleak predictions that they might give you about your child. And learn what your parent rights are, learn what's available for your child, and you can have a successful outcome for your child's future. Your child, has a right to try and get even if your child is severely behind grade level, they still have the right to try to get a high school diploma and be included in general education. So, I hope that most of you parents that are listening to me, I'm pretty sure you had your aha moment where you've realized this and you've already started educating yourself and you're already on your way to becoming a parent advocate for your child. But the biggest thing in this video I hoped I got across to you was the paradigm shift of the institutional bureaucracy and learning to be the coach of your IEP team and working with your team with respect and communication, and bringing them together as a cohesive IEP team with you as the equal IEP team parent participant. So I hope you got a lot out of this video tonight and it's motivated you to learn more about your parent rights and that you are preparing for a successful IEP during IEP season. And I'll see you tomorrow, everyone. Please be sure to like my Facebook page, because I want to help as many parents as I can through these little short videos I'm doing, giving tips to parents. I'm going to be providing a much more in-depth program very soon. I'm going to be launching it in the summer, and it's going to be an online program where you can work with me, and I'm going to be going in depth and sharing with you everything I know as an advocate so you can become your own advocate for your child. Okay? Good night, everybody.